Picture this. If you look back to the year 1946, or honestly, pretty much any time before the modern era, the conventional wisdom was that leaders, generals, and kings ruled the world through sheer courage, sharp instincts, and, those legendary gut feelings. But I'm going to tell you a harsh truth right up front. That reality? It's completely dead. Today, the world is absolutely not driven by gut instinct. It's driven by data, psychology, and behavioral science. We are officially living in the golden age of behavioral manipulation. The people pulling the strings aren't the ones shouting the loudest anymore. They're the ones who understand how to quietly, invisibly shape human behavior. Today, in this explainer, we are decoding the absolute masterpiece that is Robert Cialdini's Pre-Suasion. We're going to map out the psychology of influence used by the world's absolute top strategists. Because if you think you just need to say the right things to influence someone, you are missing the entire picture. The real game? It begins long before you even open your mouth.
So let me ask you, is this psychological trigger affecting you right now? Well, I'm going to plant a seed right here. Throughout this explainer, there's a very specific psychological trigger that might already be playing out in your own mind as you watch. I've literally already set it in motion. Think about it. What if you could prepare someone's mind before a conversation even started, making them completely 100% receptive to your pitch? That is the essence of persuasion. I'll actually reveal what trigger I just used on you a little bit later, so you're definitely going to want to listen carefully to every word to see if you can spot it.
You see, the entire game of persuasion really comes down to what experts call the privileged moment. Old military generals used to think that persuading someone required weeks of intense strategic maneuvering. But the truth? A person's decision can actually be heavily influenced in just a few crucial seconds. Master strategists don't force their ideas on people. Actually, they act more like gardeners. Think about it. If the soil is rock hard and completely dry, you can throw 1,000,000 seeds down and absolutely nothing is going to grow. You have to prepare that mental soil first. You have to bring their attention and mindset to a place where they are already primed to say yes during that tiny, privileged moment.
Let me give you a crazy example. Imagine a consultant who needed to charge a new client $75,000 for a project. Now, if he had just walked in and bluntly said, "My fee is 75 grand," the client probably would have instantly rejected it as way too expensive. Instead, he used a psychological technique called anchoring. He walked into the meeting and casually joked, "Don't worry, I'm not asking you for $1 million." The client chuckled, but subconsciously, that massive number, $1 million, had just anchored itself right into the client's brain. So when the consultant then revealed his actual fee of $75,000, suddenly it seemed incredibly small and completely reasonable by comparison. The client agreed without a single fight. It's wild, right? The first number you encounter literally rewrites how you perceive everything that comes after it.
And it's not just the numbers you hear. Your physical environment is quietly manipulating your choices without you ever even realizing it. In one pretty incredible study, researchers went to a wine shop. On certain days, they played traditional German music really softly in the background. And guess what? On those specific days, customers were significantly more likely to buy German wine. Now, if you went up and asked those customers why they chose that specific bottle, they would swear to you it was their own free will. But it wasn't. Their environment had quietly hijacked their decision-making process. Your surroundings silently shape what you notice, what you remember, and ultimately what you pull your wallet out to buy.
Okay, so how do you actively build trust before you even make a pitch? Consider this brilliant house key technique used by a legendary, ridiculously successful salesperson named Jim. Jim didn't just rely on having a great product. The guy literally manufactured trust out of thin air. Whenever Jim visited a potential client at their home, he intentionally left an important file in his car. Right before his pitch began, he'd act surprised and say, "Oh shoot, I left a book in my car. Would you mind giving me your house keys so I can lock the door behind me while I grab it?" And amazingly, people just handed him their key. Think about the subconscious facial relaxation, that immediate dropping of the guard that happens right there. Because who do we give the key to our private secure home to? Only someone we deeply trust. By forcing the client to perform an action so heavily associated with trust, Jim's credibility was entirely solidified before he ever even tried to sell a thing.
All right, now we're going to step into some of the slightly darker layers of the human psyche. We're moving away from physical actions and right into the abstract, messy space of your mind. Because here's the reality. If you can control someone's attention, you can literally alter their perception of reality. Imagine you're at a party and someone grabs your hand, totally unprompted, to read your palm. They look deeply at the lines on your hand and say, you're a very stubborn person. Your brain immediately agrees. You think, wow, yeah, I totally am. But later on, that exact same palm reader tells a completely different person, your lines show you are a very flexible and sociable person, and that person wholeheartedly agrees too. So, is the palm reader a wizard? No way. This is what psychologists call the positive test strategy. Whenever someone suggests a trait to you, your brain automatically hunts through your hidden memories to find any evidence that validates it. If I call you stubborn, your brain instantly retrieves memories of you refusing to listen. If I call you flexible, it retrieves memories of you compromising. Your brain automatically looks for evidence to support whatever idea is placed directly in front of it. It's wild.
So let me ask you, are you unhappy with your social life? Notice what just happened. The very second you heard that question, your attention immediately shifted straight to your social problems. You probably started remembering fleeting feelings of loneliness or awkward conversations or past rejections. The question itself just dictated your reality in that moment. And guys, this is exactly how modern media and politicians manipulate society. They really don't have to explicitly tell you what to think. They only need to dictate what you think about. If they force a specific topic onto your screen over and over and over, your mind will instantly search for confirming memories, making you firmly believe it's the absolute most urgent crisis in the entire world.
And this perfectly breaks the myth of multitasking. You might be sitting there thinking, oh, I can just pay attention to everything all at once. Well, actually, scratch that. You can't. Human attention is a fiercely guarded, incredibly limited resource. This brings us to the attentional blink. When information comes flying at you rapidly, your brain literally goes blind for a split second. It temporarily misses that second piece of information because it's still busy chewing on the first one. You aren't really multitasking. Your brain is just frantically switching back and forth, dropping crucial pieces of reality along the way.
Because our attention is so heavily limited, we follow a strict psychological rule. What gets noticed gets valued. The legendary psychiatrist Milton Erickson used to do something absolutely brilliant to hack this. In a super noisy room, instead of shouting to be heard over the crowd, he would actually lower his voice to a faint whisper. To hear him, people physically had to lean in and focus all of their attention right on him. That physical act of focusing entirely tricked their brains into assigning massive importance to whatever he was saying. We subconsciously use visual prominence as a shortcut for value. If a CEO's face occupies the most space on the camera during an interview, our brain just automatically assumes they are the most important part of the entire story.
Which leads us to a pretty terrifying question. Can your very memory be manipulated? The answer is, tragically, yes. Consider the incredibly intense case of Peter Riley. Peter's mother was murdered, and Peter was brought in for a grueling, hours-long interrogation. Under extreme psychological pressure, with interrogators entirely, relentlessly controlling his focus, Peter's perception of reality completely broke down. He actually began to doubt his own memories. He ended up confessing to a murder he didn't commit. Later on, rock-solid evidence proved he wasn't even at the scene. He was entirely innocent. But it shows us that when someone controls your attention under extreme pressure, they can literally force you to accept a reality that never even existed. Okay, let's take a breath, lighten the mood a bit, and talk about a fascinating cognitive loop known as the Zeigarnik effect. Back in the 1920s, a German waiter amazed researchers by remembering these massive, complex orders perfectly without writing a single thing down. But the second he delivered the food to the table, poof, he forgot the order entirely. Why? Because incomplete tasks remain highly active in our minds. Once completed, the brain just deletes them to save space. This is exactly why cliffhangers in movies haunt us for days. And hey, remember at the very beginning of this explainer when I told you a psychological trigger was already affecting you and that I'd reveal it later? Yep, that was me using the Zeigarnik effect on you. I opened a mental loop, leaving a task incomplete in your mind, practically ensuring you would keep watching to find out the answer. Pretty sneaky, right? Now, this invisible influence extends directly into the language we use every single day. Words are not just neutral little vehicles for communicating facts. Words are precisely engineered psychological triggers, perfectly designed to command a behavioral response from you. The way a concept is framed literally changes how your physical brain processes the solution.
Think about how a single word can shift the behavior of an entire public. If a politician stands up and describes crime as a wild animal, the public immediately demands strict imprisonment, cages, and hunting it down. But if crime is described instead as a disease, that single word flip completely changes public behavior. Suddenly, voters want to focus on treatment, prevention, and curing the root causes. The underlying problem in the city is exactly the same, but the metaphor completely changed the public's behavioral response to it.
Marketers do this constantly to reframe reality and avoid triggering your negative emotions. They don't ever say you're buying an old car. I mean, that sounds like a breakdown waiting to happen on the highway. No, they say it's pre-owned. They don't say a college education is a massive cost. They call it an investment. And the ultimate psychological trigger? Hearing your own name. That right there is why personalization is the absolute most potent weapon in modern advertising. Your brain is hardwired to snap to attention the very second your identity is invoked.
So, we are constantly navigating a total minefield of invisible cues every day. To help you protect yourself, let's walk through a rapid-fire survival guide. We're going to examine the universal psychological toolkit used to steer everyday human decisions. These are the 7 rules of influence.
Rule number 1 is reciprocity. When someone gives you a small, unexpected gift, it creates a hidden, nagging mental debt. You feel intense psychological pressure to return the favor. This is exactly why charities send you those free little return address labels in the mail. But remember the defensive takeaway here. Healthy giving shouldn't secretly force a decision. You should give because you want to, not to create a manipulative trap.
Rule number 2 is authority. We are hardwired from birth to trust credible experts. But here is a counterintuitive, highly manipulative tactic you really need to watch out for. When a leader or salesperson openly admits a small limitation or weakness, it actually makes them appear far more honest and credible. Hearing someone say, "Look, I don't know everything, but," makes you instantly drop your guard, allowing their main point to hit you with double the authority.
Next up is scarcity. Only 3 left in stock. Offer ends at midnight. We value things exponentially more when we think they are slipping away from us. To protect yourself against this artificial urgency, I want you to memorize this defensive mental checkpoint right now. Whenever you feel rushed to buy something, stop, take a breath, and ask yourself, would I still want this if there were absolutely no deadline? The next major trigger is unity. And this isn't just about liking someone, this is deeply tribal. They're one of us. Manipulators exploit this constantly by using family or us versus them language. Hey, I'm giving you the same exact deal I'd give my own brother. This completely bypasses your logical defenses and triggers a deep, primal sense of tribal belonging. Always ask yourself, are they actually giving me good advice or just exploiting my natural desire to belong?
So just to quickly recap the toolkit, we have reciprocity, authority, scarcity, and unity. But there's also liking, which means building true rapport, not just fake bubbly personas. There's social proof, our deep need to look around and see what everyone else is doing when we feel uncertain. And finally, consistency, where securing just one tiny yes from you makes you psychologically compelled to keep saying yes to larger and larger requests. These 7 rules, they are the manipulative strings attached to everyday life.
And this brings us right to our ultimate defense. The strongest protection against all of this isn't spending years learning how to become a master manipulator yourself. No, the real power is deeply understanding these psychological principles so they become your ultimate shield in the modern world. Once you can actually see the strings, nobody can pull them without your explicit permission. You become totally immune to the anchoring, the environmental framing, the loaded metaphors, and the false scarcity.
I'm going to leave you with this lingering thought to chew on. Every single time you open your phone, walk into a retail store, or sit down for a Zoom meeting, the mental soil is being tilled. The environment has been deliberately set. The first numbers have been carefully chosen. Someone has already prepared the privileged moment. So I have to ask you, who is trying to persuade you today? Thanks for exploring this explainer with me, and definitely stay sharp out there.